Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Good evening to everyone out there listening to WCATradio.com. My name is Robert Madrigal, the host of this show. Know Your Faith, a forum for those who know the faith, a source for those who would like to get to know the faith, a.k.a. Unapologetically Apologetics. And on this show, we talk about Catholic apologetics, and we are unapologetic about our love for God, our love for Christ, and our love for the Catholic Church. Tonight we're going to talk about the very basics of apologetics, or what I like to say, Apologetics 101. And tonight I'd like to focus on the reasons why I feel it's so important for us Catholics to study apologetics. And I want to talk about some of the problems that we face in the Catholic Church. The major problem that I want to focus on is it seems as though Catholics are falling away from the Church in droves. So tonight I would like to present my thoughts on not only what I see as the causes of that problem, but also the answer to that problem. Through the past several years, my view has changed from a simple passion for apologetics to a staunch opinion that apologetics can be key in keeping Catholics from falling away from the Church. But before we get into tonight's topic, I'd like to start things off right with a prayer. And we'll begin our prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we come to you in great thanksgiving this evening for this opportunity to come together as brothers and sisters in Christ so that we may learn more about our faith for the sake of defending the faith. We ask that you grant us the strength to explain and defend our faith with patience and charity, and to see challenges to our faith as a chance to evangelize and to spread the love and peace of Christ to all whom we meet. And to do this through the example of self-sacrifice that Christ provides for us through his death on the cross. We ask this in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen. And we'll end our prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Okay, so I'd like to keep things off with an explanation of what apologetics is, or to answer the question, what is the meaning of the word apologetics? Now, I could assume that most people listening to this show would know what apologetics is, but for those of us who don't, apologetics comes from the Greek word apologia, which is the word the Greeks used to describe the defense a lawyer would put up for their client. Now, typically, many may think that apologetics has to do with apologizing. Now, the two words apologetics and apologizing do have the same root word, apologia, but the two are opposites. In fact, instead of admitting guilt and asking for pardon, apologetics relates to the root word as an explanation of sorts. An explanation in defense of, and then you can fill in the blanks. An explanation of why a client is innocent of all charges as per a lawyer, and an explanation of why Catholics call priests father, as per a Catholic speaking to anyone who demands that the Catholic Church is teaching false doctrine. Apologetics is the study of facts that we can use to give a reasoned explanation of our Catholic beliefs. Now, for example, politicians can present apologetics when a person calls them to account for what they stand for during a debate, political debate during a election of some sort. Evangelical Christians would present their apologia when atheists bring doubt on the existence of God. Atheists even can present their own version of apologetics. And although for atheists I find that it's usually a presentation of doubt against our beliefs, as theists. And we, in turn, have to present an apologia in response. And therein lays one of the problems that I want to talk about tonight. Both Protestants and atheists are learning how to present their ideals in a very well thought out manner, and they have it down to a science. But the worst thing about it all is that it seems as though the two groups, atheists and Protestants, have someone who they think of as a common enemy, and that would be the Catholic Church. Now, as long as they feel that we are their common enemy, us Catholics will always be in the middle of their attacks. This is one thing that atheists and Protestants agree on: their opposition to the Catholic Church. So to sum it up, apologetics is the study of facts that we could use to speak in defense of our beliefs when they're under attack. And it has nothing to do with apologizing. Apologetics is used when someone needs to explain something due to confusion or misunderstandings or whatever you have when it comes to certain beliefs or ideals. Just as an example, let's say that someone states that Catholics worship saints and statues and the Virgin Mary. The study of apologetics will help us to be better prepared to know how to explain to that person that Catholics worship just one true God, and we show reverence for the saints and our Blessed Mother, the Virgin Mary. But I must admit that everything that I'm speaking of right now and the way I feel about apologetics and how important it is for us to study apologetics for our church and to defend our beliefs, I'm just here to offer my opinion on it, really, and that's because I have met some folks in the Catholic Church who are of the opinion that apologetics has nothing or has no place in our church. I've been asked before, why should we study apologetics? And really, that is a good question. Why should we study apologetics? A catechism teacher that I once worked with in the past asked me, do you study apologetics just so you can win when you get into a disagreement with Protestants? Well, to be honest, that is a good answer. I would like to know the answer or how to answer the challenges that Protestants present to me. And when I say Protestants, I really have to mention that I include like evangelical Christians and folks who call themselves born-again Christians and Bible Christians, because that's all kind of one big group, really. And sometimes I'm not really sure how to address the group when I'm speaking to a person. Sometimes I'll say a Protestant. They'll say, I'm not a Protestant, I'm a evangelical Christian. So I'll use the words evangelical Christian, and they'll say, no, I'm a born-again Christian. And sometimes I'll say, well, okay, born-again Christian, and they'll say, no, I'm an evangelical Christian. So I find that it's best to address them as Bible Christians. They really, a lot of times when I speak to some of our evangelical brothers and sisters, Bible Christians doesn't really offend anybody or cause any kind of negative reaction. So, like I was saying, I would like to know the answers to the challenges that Bible Christians present to me when I'm approached, for sure. But for me, apologetics means so much more than that. Apologetics is a great way to teach parishioners more about the faith, especially when they're very curious and they want to learn. Then these parishioners could in turn pass this knowledge on to their children so that they can prevent them from falling away from the church as well. So, the point I'm trying to make is that we should study apologetics so that we don't lose our parishioners to the folks who are out there working hard to evangelize them into the different churches and beliefs, therefore causing them to fall away from the Catholic Church. But then, thinking back, when I mentioned this to that catechism teacher that I was talking about before, she argued, well, that's exactly why we teach them the catechism. We teach parishioners the catechism so that they can know the faith. Well, I could tell you all, everyone out there listening, about my own personal experiences. I am what you call a revert to the Catholic Church. I converted to a different church, and I came back to the Catholic Church, and that's what you'd call a revert. And I could tell you from my own personal conversion and reversion story that my mom raised me Catholic, and she was a very devout Catholic as well. And she always made sure that I was in Mass. I attended Mass with her every Sunday from a very early age. She enrolled me in catechism classes from when I first learned how to read, all the way through First Holy Communion and First Confession. And I still fell away from the church at a very early age. I fell away from the church at the age of 13 because I had met some born-again Christians. They called themselves born-again Christians. And these Christians that I fell in with told me that the Catholic Church is wrong about everything under the sun. Now, among other things, I was told that it's wrong to call priests father. It's wrong to pray to saints, and that Catholics worship the Virgin Mary. Now, I was very young at the time, so I didn't know how to answer these questions. And this caused me to fall away from the church. And I stayed away for 18 years at very risk to my soul because I didn't realize that these things are just things that people say about the Catholic Church. I could attribute them to misunderstandings and even lies that are held on to and spread against the Catholic Church. Additionally, I've seen this situation a dozen times or more when an evangelical Christian tells me I used to be Catholic, but now I'm Christian. Or I was Catholic before, but now I'm saved. I've seen these things being said on blogs, on YouTube, where people post videos on their blogs with titles like Witnessing to Catholics or Trying to Save Catholic Souls. So basically what I'm saying is when we Catholics know the answer to these questions and challenges, we could at least give them these answers, and this will keep us from falling away from the church. And then we'd end up posting videos on YouTube on how we used to be Catholic, but now we're saved. I've seen this situation too many times in the past, and that is the reason why I feel that studying apologetics is so important. But to be perfectly honest, if I could win a debate with a Protestant or two, that wouldn't be so bad either. Maybe it might be just what it takes to plant the seeds in that person's mind that might grow and help them become a convert or maybe even revert to the Catholic Church. So that wouldn't be so bad. I wouldn't mind winning a couple of debates if that was the case with the Bible Christian. Well, now I would like to switch gears a bit and talk about what I see as the causes of the problems. And of course, the problem I'm talking about now is the way Catholics are falling away from the church in droves due to a lack of understanding of our very own Catholic beliefs and practices. So the question I ask is, where are all these challenges coming from, and which are the groups out there who are challenging us Catholics to defend our faith and the church? Well, as I see it, there are three main groups who are actively targeting Catholics for evangelization. But like I said, I could only offer my opinion, really. I say that because I know that there are many people out there that will be thinking, oh, there's many more groups than that, or there's other factors that you're leaving out of the equation. Excuse me. There's probably more than just three groups, but I want to concentrate on these three groups who target Catholics for evangelization because I've personally had a substantial experience with them. Not so much the groups that are out there who are rumored to have or have a history of targeting Catholics, or groups I may not even be aware of. These are just groups that I have come across in the past and had a lot of experience with. So what I'd like to do is list the groups that I have in mind, and then I'll talk about each one of them in more detail. Also, I would like to go over what I see as the methods that they employ for evangelizing Catholics, the misunderstandings that they believe about Catholic traditions and practices, and how they differ from actual Catholic beliefs and practices. So the way I see it is the three groups are, and I will count them down from what I see from the least to the largest threat to the Catholic Church. At number 3, I would say that our brothers and sisters who make up the evangelical Christian movement, aka Bible Christians, and this includes Protestant, mainline Protestant or original Protestant churches. At number 2, I would say that within the church we have unorthodox Catholics who are teaching from within the church unorthodoxies. And not only these people who are in the church teaching unorthodoxies, but I've also seen a lot of people who talk a lot about politics, and I've seen a big political movement going on from within the church. But the biggest threat that I see to the Catholic Church is atheism. And I have to say that not all atheists are alike. There seems to be a huge movement out there where atheists are evangelizing different types of Christians that include evangelicals and Protestants and Catholics. And this is going on all over the world. But the thing about it is they target religion in general. They're not just saying they don't believe in God. They're just working hard to make religion useless or get rid of religion in the world. Well, that's the way I see it anyway. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But so for now, what I'd like to do is talk about the three groups in more detail and how they differ from one another. And maybe even more importantly, how the three are the same. So I'll start off with what I list as number 3. And I know that Protestants are evangelical Christians are our brethren, and they have the best of intentions in mind when they target Catholics for evangelization. But the problem is, the way I see it, for the most part, Protestants believe in and teach what the Catholic Church considers heresies. Now, there are several doctrines that Protestants and Bible Christians adhere to, which were examined by the magisterium of the Catholic Church prior to the Protestant movement of the 1500s. And they were declared to be heresies, sometimes centuries before Martin Luther wrote his 9-5 Thesis, which is generally considered the beginning of the Protestant movement. Now, the biggest issue that I personally come across is the Bible alone doctrine. And this comes from the Protestant movement of the 1500s, and nowadays any other sect basically in the Western world that adheres to Christianity believe in this doctrine, and it's a very popular doctrine to adhere to. Now, this Protestant doctrine can at times become very problematic. But the biggest issue I personally come across is that everyday Christians can sometimes take this doctrine a few steps too far, and they'll tend to become a self-proclaimed Bible scholar overnight and without any study. And when I say study, I mean official study under a Bible scholar. I'm not saying they don't study the Bible at all, but usually it's any type of Bible study is done at home with a pastor or maybe someone who has never studied officially, and now they're teaching the Bible out of their living room. I've seen this happen many times. And then I've seen some people run around and they start teaching their own brand of Christianity straight out of the Bible. And I've seen people who do this who are not a part of an official church. To me, this seems like it could be problematic. Now, I cannot call myself a Bible scholar either, not by a long shot, but there have been several times that I had people, or even a group of people, preaching to me on the street straight out of the Bible. And when I ask a very question about Bible interpretation, they'll always give me a blank stare. So what we need to keep in mind is that there are many things that will make interpretation of the Bible very difficult without official study and under a qualified Bible scholar. I always make the point that there are even some priests out there in the Catholic Church, Catholic priests who may not be 100% qualified to properly teach the Bible. But in the case of a priest, at least they've studied and understand theology. That's very important, because I strongly believe that when you look at the Bible and you study the Bible without theology, this makes the Bible subjective. Excuse me. It becomes subject to one's own personal interpretation. So just to mention a few examples using verses, chapters and verses of the Bible, just to give a few examples of how some people take verses and they add their own interpretation to them. If we look at the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, verse 9, call no man father. In the same Gospel, chapter 6, verse 7, do not babble like the pagans. Now, do not babble like the pagans is used to, I guess, indoctrinate Catholics that our rosary prayer is wrong. But that's not babble, that is repetitive prayer. See how they're adding their own interpretation into that. We'll look at Matthew chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus is the only way to the Father, and that's used, of course, against our prayer to saints and reverence for the Holy Mother, our Holy Mother, and also confession. These are all verses from the Bible which are used to falsely show that the Catholic Church preaches and teaches heresies. And there has been several times in the past when I've been told that all Catholics, every Catholic alive should convert over to a good Bible-believing church where false doctrines are categorically rejected. Now, I would like to mention that not all evangelical Christians are alike, and they don't all use these types of tactics to lead Catholics away from the Catholic Church, or as some of them might say, lead Catholics to the Lord. Now, I don't want to generalize here, but to be perfectly honest, personally, I have never met a Protestant who doesn't use Scripture to mislead Catholics. Now, the only way for a church to grow is to get people to attend church services, right? Or in the case of Bible Christians, to get the people under pews and to listen to their sermons. So it appears that they see Catholics as easy targets. The largest group of Christians out there are Catholics. And the second largest are fallen away Catholics. And a lot of us, we really don't know the answers to these questions and challenges that they present, so they see us as easy targets. Now, the problem is that a majority of the time, Protestants target Catholics and get us to convert, so to speak, with conversion in quotation marks. And I say so to speak with convert in quotation marks because you can't convert a Christian to Christianity. There's no conversion there. All that's happening is that they're getting us to start attending their church services. And we have to walk away from over half of our Catholic Christian beliefs. I see this as very problematic. And in my opinion, what should be happening is that we, meaning Catholics and Protestants alike, should be concentrating our efforts on converting the world to Christianity. Or at least trying to get atheists to convert over to belief in God. But what's happening nowadays, it seems like there's too much infighting between Christians, meaning Protestants and Catholics mainly, for us to get this together and start converting the world to Christianity. Well, before I start going on too long about this, because there's much more to say about this subject, I would like to move on to number 2 on my list, and that is unorthodox teachers who are teaching unorthodoxies within the Catholic Church. And this is what I see as the second biggest threat to the Catholic Church. People working on the inside of the church who teach unorthodoxies. Now, with this one, I have met people who are Catholic, and it seems like they love the church just as much as I or anyone else does. But the problem is that sometimes us Catholics try to change the church and her teachings to what suits us best. And what I mean by that is we start to accept things like abortion, euthanasia, and all these other issues that go against the Orthodox Catholic teaching. And then we start rejecting things like purgatory and papal authority, things that are Catholic, very Orthodox Catholic. So some of these issues that we take up can even mean that we are closer in line with Protestants, and we are actually moving farther away from the Catholic Church at that point. Now, these are just ideas and ideals that aren't truly Catholic, but they have made their way into the church. I've heard deacons and priests who are preaching these things, and from the ambo. Now, I see this as very problematic, and the problem is twofold. As we then have virtual Protestants working from within our church to evangelize Catholics. And this leads to some parishioners having a weakened faith in the church and therefore an increased number of fallen away Catholics. Yet to add to this problem, we have politicians working within our church. Now, I have met people who are members of the church, but it seems like they don't care much about the church and her teachings, and instead of becoming devout Catholics, they see the church as a way of spreading their political views. For me, this means that these folks are more politician than they are Catholic, because they are always talking about the political issues of the day and never about the gospel. Now, I see this as a really big problem, because one of the parishes that I worked at before I studied in the seminary was more like a political machine than a Catholic parish. I met people at this parish, and I don't want to give away the name of this parish, but I've met people at this parish who will tell you who they will vote for and why, and at the same time, they know little, very little, about the Catholic Catechism. Or even worse, I've heard parishioners quote Marx straight out of his Communist Manifesto right after Mass. And it's usually because of something that they heard in the homily that Father had given that day. For me, that's a very sad situation. And not only that, but I have also met a man at a parish who was a county commissioner. And he ran for his spot as a Democrat, as a county commissioner. But back in his day, his college days, he was very well known as being a registered communist. And he has had his spot as a county commissioner very guaranteed year after year, and election after election, because of all the votes that he could depend on from all his friends that he had made in the 3 local parishes that are within his county district. Now, this amounts to a politician using the church and her parishioners to spread their politics. Now, this is a very sad situation, which I hate to see happen. But the reason why I think of it as a bigger problem than Protestants evangelizing Catholics is that this is all going on from within the church. It's like the old cliche saying, we have a fox in the henhouse or spies in the Kremlin. But I think this situation within our church pales in comparison to the number 1 challenge to our church, and that is atheism. What I think as the greatest challenge to the Catholic Church nowadays, also the greatest challenge to Christianity and religion in general, is all the work that atheists are doing nowadays. Now, I know that not all atheists are out there protesting and organizing against religion. But it does seem like there's a huge movement out there against religion. And in this country, they single out Christianity, and even more specifically, the Catholic Church. It seems like this movement is being coordinated by a large number of atheists. Now, when I first came back to the church 12 years ago, I thought that the Protestants were the single largest group out there organizing against the Catholic Church. But since then, I've changed my views, and now I personally list atheists at the top. And that's because I have met many atheists who are former Christians and now preach against Christianity. Atheists also display a lot of their work in the media. There's movies, music, blogs on YouTube, and even books that are dedicated to the atheist movement. YouTube is probably the best example. So I want to tell everybody about a little challenge that I have, and I would like to challenge everybody out there to test YouTube, if you will. So tonight, or whenever you get a chance, if you've ever looked up on YouTube or you know how to use YouTube, type in Catholic Catechism and see what videos come up. But if you're not familiar in how YouTube works, what you do is you pull up the website, you type in a key word, and a set of video blogs will be listed for you to choose from on the screen. Now, once you click on one of those videos, that video will play on screen for you. When you type in the keywords Catholic Catechism, you will notice that most or not, if not all of the videos that come up are on the Catechism, just like they should be. But what happens is once you click on one of those videos, all the related videos that show on the screen will change. What happens is after you click on the first video, most of those related videos will change from the Catholic Catechism to anti-Catholic and anti-Christian videos. And each time you click, less and less videos will come up on the Catholic Catechism. The last time I did this, it only took me 3 clicks before all the Catholic videos were replaced with atheist and Protestant videos. So if you'd like to try this out at home, just log on to YouTube and see what happens. Some of the video blogs are usually done by atheists, but Bible Christians and even Christians who converted to atheism also post on YouTube. And from what I've seen, 80% of the atheist blogs are done by former Christians who are now atheists. And I've seen titles like Former Christian Turned Atheist and Why I Don't Believe in God Anymore. I even seen a couple of them that are titled Theism Made Me Say Ridiculous Things. Now they'll go on to explain that they lost their faith because of something a Christian did or something terrible in the history of the Christian world, or maybe because of something in their founder's past. So what does all this mean, you might ask? Why would I take up almost the entire show to talk about these problems and the causes of these problems? Well, like I mentioned, I feel that these issues cause the larger problem of Catholics falling away from the Catholic Church. Well, the answer to that problem is that the way I see it is very simple. I see apologetics as a great way to address the problem, like I said before. Now, there are many ways that we can address this problem, but as far as I'm concerned, we can count apologetics among them and even at the top. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I see apologetics as a great way to teach parishioners the faith. And the reason why I say that is because for me, apologetics is a great way to break things down to a level that is easier for the average person to comprehend. So what I mean is we could take any issue that is either complicated or just plain confusing and explain it in such a way that makes it easy for anyone to understand. And most of the time, I find that there are folks out there that take the complicated issues and add to the confusion by explaining them in their own context and interpretation. That's what we're fighting out there. We're fighting against that sort of thing. So anytime I make a presentation of any sort, or when I'm approached by someone with a question, I always look at any issue with an apologetics approach. And that is that I take everything and break it down so that I could explain it from the very basics, therefore making the complex seem simple. But like I said, there are many ways to teach the faith and to spread the word of the gospel. The catechism is a great way, and a good homily from Father on Sunday wouldn't hurt either. But just teaching Catholic dogma and the catechism isn't enough in today's social, political, and religious climate. Protestants use the perceived weakness in Catholic traditions so that they may confuse Catholics into believing that the Church teaches doctrines that are contrary to the Bible, like I was saying before. So a lack of understanding in Catholic traditions can lead us into problems where Protestants are concerned. Unorthodox teachers and politicians within the Church can mislead otherwise faithful Catholics to buy into anti-Catholic Protestant doctrines from within the Church. Hence, there is a greater threat to the Church because the problem originates from within, and it comes from otherwise trusted sources. And what I mean is, when it comes from a priest, it is much more difficult to debate the source. And the worst part about it is politicians are also working within the Church. And the politics of the day are sometimes held in higher esteem than God and family. But the biggest threat to the Catholic Church comes from the growing atheist movement, and it is twofold. Atheists target fallen away Catholics and our Protestant brothers and sisters because Protestants believe in the Bible alone doctrine. And this can prove to be a very big problem. And that's because the Bible can be very difficult to understand. Atheists then exploit this situation and use what I call an atheist Bible study to create confusion among Christians. Then they add in atheist bias because of their lack of understanding of the Bible, and it is clouded and tainted by their rejection of a basic belief in God. Now, think about it this way. How can a person embrace the belief in the Holy Trinity? One person, one God in three persons, if they don't believe in God in the first place. And so then Jesus, being the only Son of God, is also impossible to understand for someone who rejects the very notion of the existence of God. Most of our Catholic beliefs will not only be impossible to accept, but they will also seem ridiculous and silly to an atheist. I mean, a virgin birth, Jesus' resurrection, coming back from the dead, Jesus is walking on water and raising the dead. Now all this bias, or atheist bias, taints any understanding of an already hard to understand Bible. Yet atheists study the Bible and turn their misunderstanding into confusion, thus creating more fallen away Catholics and Bible Christians. Now, during an atheist Bible study, certain chapters and verses of Scripture are taken and twisted around and even given different meaning that are so far away from the original meaning that it makes God out to be an evil God who kills at will and for no reason. Some might think that I'm exaggerating, but if so, I would invite you to look at the blogs that former Christians turned atheists are posting on YouTube, the website I was talking about earlier. It wouldn't take long for you to see my point, because the internet is chock full of former Christians who feel they've wasted their time and most of their lives on mythical beliefs and are very let down because of it. That is what fuels their anger as they lash out at our fellow Christians for being part of that system. Well, in all these factors give weight to my theory that apologetics is very important for our church, because we can use apologetics as our tool in our effort to spread the gospel and evangelize the church from within. All this infighting between Christians becomes a multi-pronged attack that is coming at us in full force and from every angle and every front imaginable. We should use every tool at our disposal, and my personal goal is to spread the belief and use of apologetics. Well, that's all we have time for tonight's show. I'd like to thank everyone out there for listening. Please join us in 2 weeks from now, when we will talk about different Catholic issues that are basically taken up against our church by Bible Christians. And there's some of the issues that come from the Bible alone doctrine. And the two issues that we'll be concentrating most on in 2 weeks is, why do Catholics call priests father? I'm sure a lot of you out there have heard that question before. And we'll be discussing confession as well. So take care for now. Stay faithful, and may God be with you until 2 weeks from now. I would like to ask everyone to pray for fallen away Catholics to return to our church, so that they may take part in the Holy Eucharist, and for all who believe, and us to vote Catholics to receive the Holy Eucharist as much as we can, and even every Sunday. So that's all we have time for tonight, and I'd like to say goodbye to everyone out there listening to WCATradio.com. Please join us in 2 weeks, and I will be hoping to see you then. Take care, and God bless.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.